Great. Welcome, everybody. I am Jon Taylor. I'm a clinical social worker. I have a practice just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, and I primarily work with folks in addiction recovery, um, trauma recovery, and couples who are working on healing from both sex addiction and trauma. So that's where this webinar kind of organizing principle comes from. I think that there's a lot that we learn in our individual healing and individual recovery that helps us to do great in relationships. And so that's what we talk about each week is one little aspect of relationships, what makes it work and how you can practice it better. So today our topic is commitment. And this is a big nebulous idea. So I'm going to try to really pull it down to its most bare bones components. And what I want to start with on commitment is when it comes to commitment, actions speak much louder than words. And what I see in individual recoveries, for those of you who have been in like 12-step rooms or therapy, how often early on in a recovery or did you see people in recovery say to one another or get the feedback, so you come here every week, you say you want to be sober, but what are you doing about it? What's really changing? This is an experience that I think people have in their individual recoveries very early on if they're going to stick with it. Just about everybody comes face to face with this. I say I want this, but my action's not aligning with this. And I've got to change my actions in order to align with this if I want to get what I want. Commitment in a relationship is the same way. So what I'll see most often in the couples I work with is shortly after discovery or disclosure, there's a lot of words around, no, this relationship is what I want to fix things with you, I want to tell you the truth. I would say behavior very rarely follows that lockstep. And often we have to work on getting the behavior to match the commitment, or we have to go back and we have to examine the commitment and the words and say, is that really what you meant? Or do you feel something different about this? Because now's the time to tell the truth about this. Especially with the men who I work with who are struggling with mother enmeshment, this is a huge thing we have to work on. It's very easy for them to say the right words, but to follow that through with committed action is difficult. So one of the telltale signs that commitment is not strong in a relationship is when we hit a trough, which every relationship has peaks and troughs. When we hit a trough, if we're reevaluating the entirety of the relationship, that's a sign that commitment is not strong. And there's usually some really good specific reasons why we would evaluate the relationship as a whole. It's not just on a whim. This is usually a sign that there's a lot of buildup of hurt and mistrust. So when we hit a rough patch now, it means I'm not so sure I want to do this again. Oftentimes, because commitment is so much more of a show than tell thing, when partners waver in their commitment or they differ in their commitment levels, they often don't talk about it because that's a scary conversation. However, in the work that I've done with couples, this has been something that has become really freeing once we get past the initial fear response of, oh my gosh, this person doesn't feel the way that I feel, they don't want what I want. It actually provides us a real place to start when one or both parties are able to say, I'm actually not sure about this long term. Or when we're able to voice, despite all the ways you've hurt me, I can't think of anybody else that I would rather be with or another relationship I'd rather be in. So giving a voice, an actual verbal acknowledgement of the level of commitment we have can be really powerful. That's also something that I've seen in individual recoveries is when we can put words to what it is we are trying to accomplish, that tends to focus things. That tends to give us a jumping off point. Oftentimes commitment wavers because we don't feel like our partner is working on the relationship the way that we're working on the relationship, or they don't have the same level of commitment as we do. And this leaves us feeling really lonely. Loneliness is one of the biggest precursors to leaving a relationship, loneliness and disengagement, which I think we talked about a few weeks ago. So when there is that mismatch in effort, without talking about it or without giving us a chance to get our behaviors and our words aligned, this is one of the big reasons why relationships don't make it. I would even put this into the professional world. At work, if you've got a job, you work for somebody and it's not working out, The longer you go without addressing what's not working, the longer you go with just trying to make it work, the more chances it's going to fall apart in the end. So really voicing our level of commitment and our level of investment has a lot of power. Um, Relationships where there's a win versus loss dynamic are relationships where we're going to see big problems in commitment, because who really wants to be with a relationship long term where it's about defeating your spouse or being defeated, or coming out on top with your partner, or being the one who gets steamrolled. This is an indication that one or both parties have not transitioned from a me way of thinking into a we way of thinking. Because when you look at relationships that you'd consider healthy, connected, intimate, that kind of things, there really isn't this sense of there's not this overwhelming sense of me and what I need and what I'm going to get. It's a we, what's the best for the we. So in relationships where that commitment and that we sense is strong, take, for example, one of those benign things that couples fight over all the time, like dishes or who's going to do the household work. In a relationship where there's a strong sense of we, it very rarely do we have to spell out, well, it's your turn. It's just, we want to live in a home that has these qualities, so we take care of that. We look at that. And if you've got some slack on that this week because things are going rough, that's fine. I'll pick that up. And we have this back and forth. Betrayal is the biggest roadblock to commitment. And without processing past betrayals, you're never going to have a really strong commitment system. For a couple of reasons, because commitment really is this, can I make it, and do I see your actions align with a positive desire for the relationship, without being able to acknowledge verbally and behaviorally hurts that have happened in the past. There really is no effective repair that can happen. There really is there's nothing in the relationship to really commit to. It's like having the foundation poured for a house where there's no blueprint or no sense of what the house is going to look like after that. It's a lot of concrete in one place, which is really strong, but it may not be functional because there was no shape given to that. There was no overarching idea that kind of here's what we're going to do, or here's the relationship we're going to build based on where we came from. Attention elsewhere, whether that's to other potential partners, to work. Even I see this with couples in recovery. I do think there's a lot of validity in that saying that whatever you put before recovery, you're going to lose. And I think it's important to have priorities. However, I do see a lot of people hide out in their individual recovery from their relationships. So when our attention is so split that we don't have a meaningful portion of our attention or investment to bring back to our important relationships, that's one of those ways that our behavior does not align with maybe our stated position of I want this relationship to work. So there can even be good or desirable things that can diffuse some of that attention and commitment in a relationship. And it's important to be intentional at the least. So for example, with me and the work I do professionally, it's a passion of mine. It's not just a job. This very well could consume every waking moment for me. And sometimes it does, because that's where my mind is at. I'm really excited about something, or, I'm thinking through how to help clients. What I have to do in those times is to make sure that there is quality time that I've set aside and that work doesn't come into that. And I have to make sure that my spouse knows that that's what it is for me. It's not that she just caught me in this accidental mode where I'm actually present. I have to say, like, you've got my time from this time and on. And when my behavior aligns with that, like the cell phone doesn't come with me, or there's no work talk, that's what shows the commitment, and that's what makes the investment. Even if in the scheme of things, like, I spend 6 hours in that day in work and I spend 3 hours committed there, it's when my behavior aligns with my intention that trust is built and the commitment is given. Sometimes some traumas that we may have had at previous points in our life can make commitment difficult for us, or it can make commitment difficult for our partner. And the place that we go with that, or the way that we turn back to the relationship and feed the relationship in that is we have to process what some of those traumas are together. We have to communicate about it. I probably 5-6 times a week, I have a conversation along the lines of this with various clients. I can see why your relationship with your mom or your dad set you up to mistrust or to believe that you were going to be abandoned. I can see why it's hard for you to give your whole heart and all of your attention and all of your hopes and dreams to your partner, because the track record is that you're going to be let down. That stuff happens and it's valid, and it does impact things in a relationship. But again, where the behavior aligns with the desire is, if my stated desire is I want to have a relationship that I can trust, but that's hard for me. When our partner then sees our behavior align with that, I can see where you reached. I can see where that was a stretch too far and you got into some pain. We again have a narrative that aligns with the behavior that we see. So it requires some vulnerability when we have some of those attachment wounds or some of those traumas in our life that make commitment difficult. The last piece of commitment, and I think this works not just in relationships, but also in individual recovery, jobs, things like that. Sometimes commitment wavers because the nature of the relationship is not a relationship we want to be a part of, or there's some things in the relationship that do not work for us. Sometimes that can be addressed, that can be changed through negotiation and through talking it through. Sometimes the fundamental nature of the relationship or the fundamental nature of the person we're in a relationship with is not going to work for us. And so that's something that's really important to be evaluated too when we feel our commitment level wane is, have I given this relationship a chance to respond to the needs that I have? Have I given it a chance to respond to the concerns that I have? And sometimes when we have given it that chance, it's a really painful answer we get back when the relationship says, or the feeling in the relationship is, no, I can't respond. No, I can't move. That's not going to happen here. That's not going to work. I believe that it's okay and even healthy in parts of recovery. There comes a time, I would say with most of the addicted folks that I work with, where let's say like the support group that they committed to and the kind of work they committed to in the beginning of their recovery is no longer working for them. Maybe they have needs beyond just getting sober, or maybe the group they're part of is actually more rigid than they need in order to have a healthy life, but that rigidity was great in getting them sober, for example. I've seen a lot of healing opportunities come out of being able to process that. There's a need I have that this isn't able to fulfill. So not just to process that, but also to be able to move into something that is more about fulfilling our needs, and to do that in a responsible way. I think that that skill set is useful in just about any relationship we have, to be able to speak up when we're needing something that the relationship is not just providing, or that when we're needing something the relationship is no longer able to provide. When we speak up, we give an opportunity for repair to be made, or we give an opportunity for commitment to be renewed through change, or we give an opportunity to walk away with our eyes wide open, knowing that we did so for the right reason, knowing that we did so in a way that will help everybody involved, versus just running from the problem and not really voicing what it is we need. So that is the 15-minute version of commitment.
Great information. And when you first said commitment, I was like, oh, another heavy topic. But, it's so important. So, the actions speak louder than words. I thought, that is so true. And I hear so many times that the addict is like, I'm doing this now. And I'm, so why aren't you? And I hear this from partners too. It's like, they want me to now be in a different place. I should forgive them and we should just move on, even though their behavior is still over here and is not 100% in the camp of recovery. So I thought it was really critical when you were talking about giving words to what we are feeling. And I thought, when you let that go, if you're not doing that, that emotional stuff is still being transmitted. So I thought, so sometimes the words are here, and yes, I'm committed to you. Yes, I'm doing this, and I'm being honest now, and all of that stuff. But if there's that wavering, I think that people can, and I think particularly partners can pick up on that emotional, that there isn't the solid foundation. The words and the emotions are not necessarily aligned. So I think it is, and it would be important to have, even if it isn't what I want to hear, better for me to know the truth and go, gosh, he's not really 100% right now. He's in a lot of turmoil. He's willing to work on this. Am I okay with being in that space right now and just see? And we've talked before about, if it's okay to, do I have to decide right in this moment? So if I'm willing to space and some time and let people work through their stuff, we can see. The loneliness and disengaged. Yeah, if I'm feeling like doing all of this, if nobody else is at least stepping up on whatever level they can, why would I want to keep doing that? When you were talking about the foundation, I thought it is really important. It's not just let's pour concrete and have this concrete, but even when you talked about the architecture, I was thinking there's no blueprint, but there's no mutually agreed upon blueprint either. So like, I may have in my mind what I'm laying a foundation for, but if you are like, that's not any house that I ever wanted, then it still isn't going to work for the relationship. The me and we've talked about that before. I've talked about, the We Do by Stan Tatkin. And if I'm always looking to just, what's best for me, really what's best for me is what's best for a relationship, so that I have this partner and I have the unified front, or I have a team, even if it's work relationships. I was thinking about this with commitments, not just with a significant other, but, there are so many people that we're in relationship with on some level, and the levels of commitment. And so, I love that you are boundaried about, if this is the time I'm spending with my wife, I'm going to make sure that she has my full attention. And I'm, even though, like, sure, there's lots of other people that need help, and you could do this 24/7 if you if you so chose to, but like, in this time, I'm being intentional about that. Or if it's like you're going to ride your bike, or you're spending time with your sons, or whatever it is, you're doing things that help you have balance. So your commitment to your significant others and other relationships, even to your clients, you're a better therapist because you're being intentional and taking care of the relationships that feed you and support you, in the work you're able to do. So I thought too, when you're talking about the trauma and the difficulty, I thought that, and particularly the mother enmeshed men, because I thought with the mother enmeshed men, they're dealing with a relationship that is a stranglehold on them. And so they have almost no choice until they get help to break free of that bondage. But, they have no choice in commitment. So, it has to make it very difficult for them to commit to anything else, because everything else will be less of a tie to them than that primary relationship. Even if they have a significant other, their primary relationship is still going to be that, enmeshed relationship. And I was thinking too, the matching of the level of commitment. And I would rather have a verbalization of like, okay, here's where we're at. Or like you're talking about, the rigid 12-step meetings. Well, like there are, like SA is more rigid, and there are some people that's a good fit for them for their entire recovery, because they're heterosexual, they're married, they want to be monogamous. So that's a great fit, but it's not going to be a good fit for everybody. And they may find different meetings, or even within, there's a lot of 12-step meetings. And, I have my home group for a reason, because it's a good fit for me. I changed home groups a couple of years ago. It doesn't really matter why, but, I was ready for a new group. And so I found a different one that fits for me for where I am right now. Are they going to be forever? Who knows? Maybe. but I'm open to considering that, and I'll continue to evaluate that. So I think a lot of what I was hearing too was being intentional
Mm-hmm.
about the commitments. It's like I need to commit to things that are things and people, actually people, that I want to be in a relationship with at a level that is mutually, if I'm way more committed than this other person, there's not the right balance. So I need to find relationships where, there's most of the time an equal level of commitment, or we're building to that. We're on a path towards that, but not waste my time where I'm all in and they're way out.
Mm-hmm.
Or likewise, I don't need to be telling somebody, oh yeah, 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 when really I have no, where I don't feel that level of commitment. And ultimately, I think it harms the relationship because, now I'm not showing up where I should or where they're expecting me to. So great topic. So.
Yeah. Any questions on this topic or any others? You can put that in the Q&A.
And and not giving addicts a pass. And early on, I really think, they want to commit. It's so it isn't. But I just think they don't know how. And so going to a 12-step meeting and learning is what they need to do. Your thoughts?
I was going to say, I often say to the folks I work with early in recovery, I think part of the problem that leads you to the position that you're in is that you don't understand how commitment works. It's not just based on what can I say, it's based on what can I say and do. And oftentimes the experience in addiction is I'm writing a lot of checks that I can't cash,
Oh.
because I'm trying to get out of whatever this is I'm in, but I've never defined what it is that I'm in. I've never defined what the need is or what the discomfort is. And so that's a really important place to start in any relationship, is not just saying the right things, but saying what it is we can do and moving in the direction of I'm able to say more and do more in the direction of this relationship being a strong one. And it's a strong relationship when each party is coming out of a position of strength to be in that relationship. On that point of sometimes it's hard to commit because there's a relationship dynamic that we want out of. I've seen this both on the side of addicted folks in recovery and their partners in recovery, that oftentimes the recommitment after betrayal, even though both parties may really want it, sometimes it can't happen because there are long-standing relationship dynamics that even when we get sobriety in the picture, this is, at the end of the day, this is still not a relationship that either of us want to be in. And that's a hard conversation to have, especially in the context of a recent betrayal. Often both parties can feel that guilt, like the betraying party can feel the guilt. Well, I'm going to do all this betrayal, and then I'm going to say, and I don't think this is a good relationship for me. Or the partner who will say, he just got honest and vulnerable, and how can I turn and say, I don't think I want this long term, and it may have very little to do with your betrayal. It may have a lot more to do with these other things that aren't working. I often go home. So the last couple of months, I've facilitated like 3 or 4 disclosures. It's been a lot, and at the end of each one, I've gone home and my kids know that they don't know the details of what's going on, but they know that I'm helping couples tell the truth. And I'll always say to them, like, it's just so much easier if you just tell the truth about what you feel from the beginning. Tell the truth about what you're doing from the beginning. Don't let it build up. Because I think it's really, really difficult to start hearing the truth when we're not used to that, when that hasn't been coming all along.
Or to start telling the truth when you haven't been honest when you're talking to you about the motives, and I'm thinking, well, sure, if I just don't want you to be unhappy, I'm going to say, John, like I'm commit to this, and da, 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 da. Even like you're talking about the checks that can't get cashed, and I'm thinking, but now you're not upset with me because I've told you all the right things, even
Mhm.
though like I can't follow through, even if I
Yeah.
want to, I can't, because there's a deficit in my checking account, so really, really challenging. And I can imagine how difficult it is to go through a disclosure like that and be, um, you know, but okay. One other thing I was thinking of with disclosure though is even people who don't stay together, the statistics, the research that comes out of that is even if they didn't, they're, oftentimes they're parents together or whatever, and it at least moves the relationship to a
Mhm.
space where they can co-parent or be in some different relationship, even if they
Mhm.
decide not to stay together. So, and hopefully it also helps remove some of the toxicity so that they
Mhm.
aren't carrying that baggage as they go forward. I know a lot of people say don't do disclosure if you really aren't going to move forward. But what I hear you saying is like, well, we think we are going to move forward, but then we get through this and go, no, we're really not a good fit for the long haul. So,
And that's what the truth allows us to do. The truth about how we feel, what we need, what we want. It allows us to move into something that is healthier, something that is more full, and a better fit for us just by its very nature. And that's what sometimes I think it's a gift in couples when we tell the truth and we're able to say to each other, I can't sign on to that. Like that's going to help me. I've actually worked with several couples where that was the success of the couples work, is they reached a point where they could say, we know that this isn't good for us, and we don't want to continue in a relationship that continues to hurt both of us. And as ugly as divorce is supposed to be, these divorces are so collaborative, and they're so supportive. Thinking of one couple that I worked with, they made a decision to divorce about a year and a half ago, and they still talk together every day. She says he's probably one of my best friends, but that was not something that existed in the relationship because they didn't talk to each other about what they needed and what they felt, and now they do.
well, and how much healthier of a place is that? And probably also, if they get involved with other people at some point, they will know better what they really need in a relationship
Yeah.
and what isn't going to work. So hopefully, they take this information into any future relationships, as a positive as well.
Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely one of those skills. If you can do it in one relationship, you can do it in most of your relationships, or if not all of your relationships, and it will help all of them.
So we've got a question. My husband acted out since before we met in high school. It's been a few years and he seems to be changed. I don't know if I ever trust again because of what he's done in my childhood, wrought my dad's sexual addiction and his abandonment.
Yeah, these are difficult situations because I think very rarely is it possible to go back to the way that things felt before. Um, it's situations like this where I think the very best we can do, or the very best chance we can give ourselves in the relationship, is to be honest with each other about what we know is at play here. So in this case, um, there may always be, or for a long time, there may be an asterisk next to the trust, and this may be important for your spouse to be able to hold. I'm so glad that I'm seeing what I'm seeing from you. This situation and this mistrust, though, it goes back to even before you. I went through this story with my dad, and that may be some long-term healing for you. This again is where I think that commitment piece comes in, and being able to talk about where you're at in truthful terms, and in a way that you give that to your partner, not to beat them over the head with their betrayal, but you give that to your partner in a way to help them get the context for you and the context for what they're feeling in the relationship. I think that approach is what gives relationships the best chance of being able to be supportive. Um, But I do think one of the tragedies of intimate betrayal or sexual addiction is that it often hits on a wound that was already there. It often, re-breaks a bone that we already put some really painstaking effort into putting behind us. And it's a lot to come up at once. A lot of spouses in situations like this, they experience it as a double betrayal because those feelings from childhood are front and center again. And I think when it comes to wounding in relationships, it's often a very complex web. And it can be difficult to pick out, but staying focused on your individual needs in regard to both betrayals, I think is really important. And staying clear on your ability to heal or your desire to heal from that. Healing, like I said, it doesn't mean that it's like it never happened. Sometimes healing means we emerge on the other side wiser than we were when we went in. And a part of the healed self may look like I don't default to trust as easily as I used to. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think trust is a super precious thing. And often I think we give it away without thinking too much about it. We only think about it when it's been violated. And that may be something on the other end of this for folks in this kind of situation, is I realize that my trust is precious and I don't give it away as easy.
That's a good message for me too, because I tend to trust people initially until they violate it. And I keep thinking I need to learn to be a little less trusting. It's hard.
Well, I actually learned this week, and there's a forthcoming book. I think it's going to be out in November. I don't remember who wrote it. I have it in my Amazon card on pre-order. It's this guy who has studied trust, and his theory is that he calls it the trust default something. Okay. And as he's done his research, this is our default setting as human beings. We tend to trust unless our default setting is trust unless something alerts us above that trust threshold that says, take a look at this, take a second look at this. And often once we're alerted above that threshold, it's really difficult to go back below it. And that's human nature. I haven't read the book yet because it's not out, but I heard the preview, and for whatever reason, that's how we function. And I think that's a hard awakening for many people, is because it takes them out of that default setting where maybe the world is a safe place, or maybe I can trust more people than I can't. To realize that that's not the case, especially with someone who's really, really close to you, that's earth shattering. That completely changes the way that you see the world.
And my theory is that if you aren't trustworthy, then you perceive everybody else isn't trustworthy as well. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know this is just my, my stuff. Well, in this question, it's been a few years, and he seems to have been changed. And one of my thoughts was, we're talking about behavior. What has he, are his words and actions aligning? Has he, is he working on his 12-step program? Is he working, with a sponsor? Is he doing those things? Dr. Rob wrote Out of the Doghouse, and it's about rebuilding trust. And so yes, not, and we also say trust your gut. So because some people go, I'm concerned about what he's really doing. So it's challenging in all of that. But I was kind of wondering, because it says he seems to be changed, and for me as a person in recovery, like I'm always in the process of changing, and so it wasn't a switch flipped, other than I quit acting out, but that was a huge change. And then from there, it's been this gradual change, and a continued change. It's a journey for me. And I was at a 12-step meeting at this conference I was at, and it was really a powerful meeting for me. And I thought, I've been sober multiple decades, and to have something hit again, and be another, little transformative moment is really powerful, and a good reminder to me that it's an ongoing journey. So if he, so I guess my radar was up. If he's saying I've changed, it would be more important to me that I'm changing and I'm doing what I need to do.
Amen.
Other thoughts, comments, questions? I'm gonna have to go look up that book now on trust. So
I need to. I'll send you the name
okay,
when I find it.
yeah, yeah, it's in your Amazon cart, so you can let me know.
Yeah.
Well, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll leave it open in case somebody's typing right now. So do you know what the topic is for next week?
I can look it up.
No, it's okay. I just was like, if I was going to do a teaser for next week, if you happen to know it, it's all good.
I'm trying to remember. It's the last of the detour scales. So this is the third detour scale. This is one of the things that derails connection is issues around commitment. But I'm not remembering what it is right
It's
now.
all good. So stay tuned for next week. So
Yeah.
so I'll invite you back, and we'll see you next week. And thank you as always, Jon.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.